and welcome to Dining with Death. This episode is on my playlist, Dining with the Deceased, where we talk about places that are supposedly haunted. I'm coming to you today from Sanibel Island, Florida, where ghosts are said to inhabit the beach and the lighthouse. I'm going to take you on a little tour of the area, and of course we're going to eat here. I'm Stacy Lee. Let's begin. This is beautiful Sanibel Island. It is touted as one of the most perfect vacation spots in America. There are plenty of places to shop, to eat, to boat, to sail, and most famously, to hunt for seashells. Well, there were plenty of places to shop and eat, and all of that until Hurricane Ian hit in 2022. This is what the Sanibel Causeway looked like before the hurricane. It had gorgeous views and spanned the most beautiful turquoise waters you've ever seen. This is what the causeway looked like after the hurricane. As you can see, it was destroyed in just hours, and when it was, the residents of Sanibel Island were cut off from all assistance for 10 days. There are over 6,000 people who live on Sanibel Island. That's a lot of people left stranded after a hurricane, without power, without medical aid, without the ability to purchase the things that they need. 2 people lost their lives on Sanibel Island in the hurricane, and many were left stranded. About 200 households did not evacuate ahead of the storm. There were 40 people rescued without injuries, some with injuries, and then, of course, the 2 deaths. The day after the storm passed, Mayor Holly Smith was asked if the island was even livable, and she said, frankly, no. People on this island lost so much. If you haven't seen my episode on Fort Myers, Florida, you can watch that if you'd like to get a better overview of the damage done in this area. Fort Myers was absolutely demolished by the hurricane, and Fort Myers leads right into Sanibel Island. One resident there said, "It's totally devastated. I never dreamed I'd see anything like this in my lifetime, especially on Sanibel. You look at it and it does not look real. It's just so overwhelming." As you can clearly see, this resident was not exaggerating. Look at this. Whole houses are totally gone, ripped from their foundation and carried away by the winds. The poor palm trees, I really noticed them a lot while we were here. They were once beautiful, standing over the area, and they're now bent and tattered sticks, barely hanging on. There is debris everywhere, and it will be years before this area even begins to resemble what it once was. But today, months after the hurricane, I'm going to focus on the beauty of this area and the reason that so many people come here to vacation, to relax, and to hunt for seashells. The island was formed by the prevailing currents of the Gulf of Mexico about 6,000 years ago. Geologically, that makes this island basically an infant. The first humans were the Calusa, who appeared on the island about 2,500 years ago. The Calusa were a dominant Native American tribe, and they were feared among all those who traveled in this area. They developed elaborate canals and waterways and built large structures until the European colonizers arrived in the mid-16th century. By the 1700s, the Calusa had been wiped out. The first harbor appears on a map dated 1765, and it was called Puerto de Esnivel. A few years later, the name Sanibel appears on a map dated 1768. Ponce de Leon tried to settle this island in June of 1513, but he was chased off by the Calusa. The first modern settlement was established in 1832 by the Florida Peninsular Land Company. This company began marketing Sanibel as the Garden of Florida. The settlers developed 50 home sites and a town center, and they began to plant sugarcane, pineapple, pumpkins, melons, sisal, and hemp. They grew corn and they fished, and soon the area was dotted with smokehouses full of fish that were caught in these waters. Then in 1849, the U.S. government forced the settlers to abandon their farms and migrate west because there was still a great fear of the area tribes. A few years later, in 1862, the Homestead Act encouraged repopulation of the island, and in 1884, the very famous lighthouse was built. In the 1900s, Sanibel became a prime destination for vacationers, mostly wealthy families from the Northeast. This was a proper place, where even on the beach, ladies wore dresses and gentlemen wore jackets and ties. That sounds awful to me. I'm sure it looked great, but I would not want to be on the beach in a dress. In 1928, the first ferry began running back and forth between Sanibel Island and the Florida mainland. Henry Ford and Thomas Edison were regular visitors to the island, always looking for new seashells and new plant species to identify and study. In May of 1963, the massive causeway was built, making access to Sanibel Island much easier. The causeway led to an explosion of growth. The original causeway was replaced with a new one in 2007. That's the one that was destroyed. But you can now drive your car back and forth to the island. Sadly, during our visit to the area, the famous and historic Sanibel Lighthouse was closed for repairs due to the damage it sustained during the hurricane. But I've found some great photos of the old girl for you. Technically, it's a light station, but most refer to it as a lighthouse. It was one of the first lighthouses on Florida's Gulf. It stands 98 feet above sea level on an iron skeleton, and it was first lit on August 20th, 1884. There is a central spiral staircase that begins about 10 feet above the ground. It was built to mark the entrance to San Carlos Bay. The grounds are open to the public, but you cannot go inside the lighthouse. We're going to talk more about this location in a moment. We spent the day here with our kids who live here. Our son is working towards becoming a professional golfer, and his wife, our daughter, is in medical residency in Fort Myers. Here we are driving over the repaired causeway, which in and of itself is a really fun experience. You're floating over the massive expanse of water, and it's so relaxing, especially in a convertible, to just sit back and enjoy the ocean views. As you can see, the construction is far from over. They're still working on the causeway, but the important thing is that it's open and the residents aren't stranded here. The sheer amount of dead trees and foliage is kind of overwhelming. The undergrowth has already started to pop back up, but there are just so many dead trees. It's really sad. As you drive along the roads of the island, there is stark contrast in how people have chosen to deal with the devastation. Some immediately picked up and cleaned up and repaired the damages, and others, possibly because of insurance settlements and things like that, have let their homes sit, some vacant and some up for sale. Everyone's situation here is different. There's a public parking area as you get to the beach, and they have this cute little sign in the parking lot pointing to all of the different cities in the area. We parked our car and started towards the beach on this little path that they've constructed between the homes. You can see some of the damage in the trees and bushes here, and you can also see that some of the homeowners have already reinstalled new fences and repaired most of the damage done to their houses. But even so, everywhere you look, not just here on Sanibel, but throughout the whole county, there are piles and piles of dead foliage. So many palm fronds and tree trunks that have been cut into several pieces just waiting to be hauled away. The trail ends and then you come to a wooden structure. We walked this long and beautiful walking bridge from the parking lot to the beach. And as we walked, we stopped to get a better view of some of the houses and the devastation. Like I said, some of them have already been repaired, but then you look into these gnarled trees and it's really a reminder of what happened here. But as we were standing here getting this footage, we saw a manatee. Look at this guy. Isn't that cool? My son said they've only seen one other time, so we felt really lucky to see this guy just cruising by in the little canal behind these houses. Wild manatees. That is something we do not have in southern Utah. As you can see, it's very green, but it also has a bit of a desert feel to it. It was breezy and warm, and the smell of the ocean air instantly relaxes you. As you can see, the area is simply stunning. The waters are so blue, the sand is so white, and those colors are reflected in the blue sky with the white fluffy clouds. People were on their boats, some of them were anchored, and they were just sitting on the waves, relaxing, swimming around in the warm water, and just enjoying this gorgeous day. Sanibel Island is known as one of the best beaches in the world for finding seashells. Look at what you're walking on. There are banks and banks of seashells, so many that at times you're not even walking on sand. You're walking on nothing but seashells. Of course, there are millions of little clam-type shells, but there are also beautiful spiral shells. Some are called murex and some are called cones. And inside them, take a look at this. So alien, right? I'm not gonna lie, I kind of feel like the ocean is just a giant bowl of monster soup. And hey, I love the ocean, but I love the beach. What goes on under the surface is none of my business. That's how I feel. And there were lots of these slimy little guys everywhere. You aren't supposed to take these murex or cone shells because the critters use them for houses. That one looked to me like he was trying to get out and maybe move on to a new shell. But again, that's his business. So we just put him back from whence he came. This is a gorgeous spot and so relaxing. You can really feel yourself just unwinding when you're here. That is, unless you see a ghost. Residents of Sanibel Island are in agreement. This is a very haunted place. One resident tells the story of owning his home here for 15 years. They have a ghost that visits regularly. He appears in the form of a translucent figure wearing American Revolutionary attire. The man said one morning he walked into his kitchen and told his wife, "I think I'm seeing a ghost." His wife said, "You're darn right you're seeing a ghost," and went on to tell him that she sees them too. Tween Waters Inn, located in nearby Captiva, is said to be very haunted. With former guests like Teddy Roosevelt and Charles Lindbergh, the lore runs deep. And then there is the Sanibel Island Cemetery. This historic location was created in 1888 by Reverend George Barnes, who was a traveling evangelist. Barnes built a homestead when he landed on Sanibel, and soon his cottage grew into a 30-room inn called the Sisters Hotel. It's now called Casa Ibel Resort, and on the property, the Reverend built the cemetery. It's only accessible by bike path. It's deep in the Florida groves. The last person to be buried here was a shrimper named Edmund Taylor. He was buried in 1967. There are about 31 graves in the cemetery, and many of them are unmarked. From sunset into the early morning hours, it is said that if you sit very quietly and if you're very patient, there's a good chance you will see the spirit of a former resident wandering in this cemetery. Many believe the ghosts are those of people buried here who don't have a headstone. But the cemetery and the inn aren't the only haunted locations on Sanibel Island. The lighthouse is said to be home to not one, but many ghosts. In the 1800s, this was a place where pirates stored their treasures. Legendary pirates like Black Caesar and Gaspar sailed in these very waters and would often come ashore to plunder the homesteads and kidnap helpless victims for ransom. Some people report seeing the ghosts of these pirates wandering near the lighthouse. There are others who report seeing the ghost of a woman dressed in Victorian clothing descending the spiral iron stairs to the lighthouse. She turns to look out to the sea as if waiting for a boat that never comes. There are reports of ghostly figures on the beach, wandering through the groves of trees, and even standing on the walkway we took to get here. From residents to visitors, locals to tourists, if you ask anyone who has spent much time here, they may tell you, even when you believe you're alone, you aren't. Now, as we always do on this playlist, we eat in our haunted location. This is Dining with Death. Today we had brunch at this fabulous spot. This is McGregor Cafe, and it's like something out of a Hallmark movie. This little white bungalow-style structure sits just off the road and features an adorable patio dotted with red umbrellas that sit under a massive tree. Jason ordered the Caesar salad. It was great. Lots of grilled chicken on well-dressed lettuce. We ordered these seasoned fries. I believe they called them Old Bay fries. It's like the South's version of poutine. The iced tea was fabulous and such a welcome sight in the Florida heat. Is there anything better than a giant iced tea in a mason jar when it's hot? I don't think so. I ordered the crab cake salad and it was great. A large, succulent crab cake with this beautiful melon salad on top. Doesn't this look good? I need to make this at home. It was so delicious. I liked the way the melon was cut into small dice so you could get a little bit of each kind in every forkful. We also tried these meatballs served with a piece of sourdough toast to soak up all the sauce. They were great. This was such a cute place and so relaxing, sitting here on the patio under the trees among the ferns. Sanibel Island is one of a kind. Come here to unwind, to relax, to hunt for seashells, to eat some great food, and if you're lucky, luckier than we were, you just might get a visit from a ghost. Thank you for joining me today on Dining with Death, Dining with the Deceased. Hit the like button if you liked the video, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more from me, and you can always join my Patreon. Stay safe, my friends, and be kind to each other, and I'll see you next time on Dining with Death. Bye.